Millionaire cries after street boy gives him bread. What Maid does next shocks all. Richard stared out the window of his penthouse, the glittering skyline of the city mocking him. Behind the grand facade of his wealth, a cold emptiness gnawed at his insides. Loneliness wrapped around him like a heavy cloak, weighing him down. Every brilliant light outside flickered like the past he couldn't escape. He remembered her face, Emily, the love he lost, carrying secrets he never learned. A sharp chill cut through him as he turned away, leaving the view of his opulence. That evening, feeling restless, he ventured out into the seedy underbelly of the city, where the sidewalks crumbled like forgotten dreams. The cold bit at his skin, but he didn't care. The night held a strange allure, and perhaps an answer to his aching soul. Shadows flickered under flickering lamps. He passed worn faces and haunted eyes, whispers of despair that felt all too familiar. Then, amidst the decay, a vision in tattered clothes, huddled next to a crumbling wall. The boy's eyes were hollow, reflecting a life of struggle. In his hands, he clutched a torn paper bag. "You hungry, mister?" the boy asked softly, offering him a piece of stale bread. For a heartbeat, time stood still. This simple gesture pierced through Richard's thick wall of isolation. A lump formed in Richard's throat. I take it. You need it more than I do," the boy insisted, so full of kindness despite his own suffering. Richard hesitated, battling his own inner turmoil. For the first time in years, something shifted within him. He accepted the bread, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper was connecting them. Suddenly, a flash of recognition. The boy's face. He was a mirror to a young Richard, lost and forgotten. A wave of guilt crashed over him, as if Emily's voice echoed in his mind, telling him everything he ran from. As he turned to leave, the boy spoke again. "My name is Jake. Do you have family?" Richard's heart raced, questions swirling. Who was this boy? A stranger? Or was it fate? The name struck a raw nerve, awakening memories that clawed at his consciousness. That night, Richard couldn't sleep. The boy's hollow eyes haunted him. Sparks of purpose ignited within him. He had to find out who Jake really was. Could he reclaim the fatherhood he had abandoned? But lurking in the shadows was Julio, Emily's estranged brother. He watched Jake with a predatory gaze. To him, Jake was not a nephew, but a pawn in a cruel game. The darkness of the past loomed, tensions rising like the storm clouds gathering outside. On the horizon, a bitter legal battle festered, and Richard found himself racing against time. The courtroom was the stage where secrets would slither into the light, and betrayal would rear its ugly head. Then, as if fate had drawn a curtain back, a letter from Emily resurfaced, her last words meant to bridge the distance between father and son. As the courtroom door swung open, a suffocating silence hung in the air. Richard stood at the threshold of his destiny, wondering if this moment would bind him to Jake or shatter them both forever. Hey, before you continue with this incredible story, I have an important warning for you. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube has and while you're at it, leave a like to help me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who is part of this community. Your participation makes a difference. Let's interact. As Richard stood at the threshold of the courtroom, his heart pounded a frantic rhythm in his chest. Every breath felt weighted with uncertainty, filled with hope and dread. He wrestled with the emotions coursing through him. Behind him, whispers danced among the assembled crowd, a blend of curiosity and concern. Eyes flicked toward Jake, who sat anxiously, his small frame tense with anticipation. Suddenly, the judge entered. The room hushed instantly, a collective inhale cutting through the palpable tension. Richard's gaze settled on Jake, who met his eyes with a mix of longing and fear. Richard had prepared for this day, envisioning reconciliation, destiny, finally at his fingertips, but he felt a storm brewing. Order in the court. The judge's voice echoed, steady but merciless. We are here today to determine the custody of Jacob Martinez. Hearing the name sent a shudder through Richard. Jacob. The name felt like a dagger tearing through the foundation of his beliefs. Jake, his son. His heart raced, each beat heavy with the weight of unspoken truths. Without warning, Richard's phone buzzed violently in his pocket. He pulled it out, glancing quickly at the screen. A message from an unknown number. You don't know the truth about Jake. Meet me outside. A cold chill seeped into his bones. Who sent this? His brow furrowed, panic clawing at him. The courtroom faded into background noise. He could barely focus. Every instinct screamed for him to leave. Yet, he couldn't abandon this moment, this fragile thread connecting him to Jake. Mr. Hale? The judge's voice sliced through his reverie. Everyone turned to him. We're waiting for your statement. Richard swallowed hard, struggling against the tightness in his throat. Yes, Your Honor, The courtroom doors swung open violently, and in strode Julio, Emily's brother, a dark storm wrapping around him. His eyes blazed, filled with a mix of malice and desperation. Richard's stomach dropped as Julio locked his gaze onto Jake, who visibly shrank back. Stop! Julio's voice roared, reverberating in the silence like a crack of thunder. I have something to say. Gasps echoed throughout the room. Richard felt the weight of fear compressing his chest as he took a step forward. Julio, don't! This isn't... Shut up! You think you can just walk in here and play the role of the father? Julio's words dripped poison. You don't even deserve to know him, Richard. What are you talking about? Richard shot back, frustration igniting within him. Jake's wide eyes darted between them, the innocence in his gaze breaking Richard's heart. Then Julio smirked, a wicked grin spreading across his face. You're not Jake's dad. He's not your son. The courtroom erupted into chaos. Whispers grew into a cacophony of disbelief. Richard's heart stopped. The world began to swirl around him. What do you mean? He managed, his voice strained, trembling. Julio stepped closer, his voice low, taunting. Emily had a secret, Richard. A secret that changes everything. Jake, and the truth of his parentage, it's not you. Stunned silence fell again, suffocating. The truth hung heavy in the air, a pendulum swinging, each heartbeat stretching the tension. Richard's mind raced, thoughts tumbling in chaos. Who was Jake, really? The faces in the crowd morphed into expressions of shock and confusion. Had he fought for something that wasn't his? Or was Jake just a pawn in a game he didn't understand? The layers of this twisted web stretched deeper than he imagined. Richard's gaze found Jake, whose face reflected confusion, betrayal. Richard's heart cracked open, agony flaring anew. Their connection, once bright and hopeful, now threatened to splinter into a million pieces. "I have a right to know!" Richard shouted into the silence, desperation gripping him. But how deep did the lies go? What would it mean for Jake? And as Richard stared into the boy's eyes, he realized he stood at the precipice of a truth he might not be ready for. The weight of the moments tightened around him, leaving a potent question lingering in the air. What did Julio know that could shatter everything Richard thought he understood? Richard felt his knees buckle. Julio's words echoed in his head, twisting like a knife. "Not your son." The phrase played on repeat, drowning out the chaos of the courtroom. Jake's eyes widened, confusion flooding his innocent face. Fear gripped Richard as he searched for words, but they fled like shadows. The room felt claustrophobic, the air heavy with disbelief and the sharp sting of betrayal. His heart raced, pounding so hard it drowned out the murmurs around him. Julio stepped forward, pushing through the whispers. "Emily had a lover, Richard. The truth's been hidden for years." His voice dripped with smug satisfaction. "Jake is not your flesh and blood." "What?" Richard gasped, feeling the ground shift beneath him. Panic rushed through him, a wave too powerful to hold back. His hands trembled at his sides, uncertainty clawing at his throat. "Stop this!" Richard shouted, desperation spilling over. He turned, his eyes pleading with Jake, who was still watching, wide-eyed and vulnerable. "It can't be true." Julio smiled, delighting in the chaos. "It is true. I saw the proof. A DNA test. Emily wanted to tell you, but..." He leaned in closer, voice low and taunting. "She took the secret to her grave." A collective gasp rippled through the room, souls shaken to their core. Gasps, whispers, shouts of disbelief echoed off the walls, wrapping around Richard like icy arms. "Not my son." The chilling notion settled in his bones. How could this be happening? "Shut up!" Richard yelled, his voice cracking. He wanted to deny it, to tell everyone it was a lie. But the pieces of the nightmare felt too solid to ignore. Julio leaned back, claws out, relishing Richard's turmoil. "You thought you could take him from me? But I know the truth about you too, Richard. You think you're a good man? Someone who can just walk into this boy's life after abandoning him for years? You're in way over your head." Richard felt the heat rise to his cheeks, shame crushing him. Memories swirled, his empty penthouse, the years lost to despair. Rage surged within him, but beneath it all lay fear. Fear of losing Jake. Fear of not knowing who he was anymore. "Order!" the judge called, the gavel banging down hard. "Mr. Hale, control yourself." Richard blinked, body humming with adrenaline. The world spun, and everything felt surreal. The onlookers' expressions danced between shock and etching pity on their faces. "No," he whispered, fighting against the tide of hopelessness threatening to engulf him. The air grew thicker, heavy with possibilities. Just then, a phone buzzed on the judge's stand, breaking the suffocating silence. The judge glanced down, eyes widening. "What is this?" The atmosphere shifted violently. He held up the phone, a grim frown deepening on his face. "This isn't just any message. This is urgent. We have to stop proceedings." Richard's heart thundered as the judge continued. "It seems there's been a revelation. A name connected to both you, Richard, and to Jake. What name? Richard's voice barely rose above a whisper, fear coiling tighter around him. The judge turned pale, reading carefully. Behind him, Julia looked bewildered. What are you talking about? Emily had a twin, and this message claims she's alive. Gasps flooded the room again. The collective breath held tight in disbelief. Richard's world flipped on its axis. Could it be true? A glimmer of hope broke through the shadow of despair. But questions flooded back. Why had Emily hidden this? Suddenly, Jake's small voice pierced the suffocating silence. What's happening? Who are you talking about? Richard turned to him, the depth of emotion crashing over him. Could it be that all they thought they knew was about to unravel? As he looked into Jake's concerned eyes, Richard felt the ground shift again. What other secrets lay buried? And in that moment, the courtroom felt like a storm about to break. Where would the winds of truth carry them next? Richard's heart skipped a beat as the judge's words settled in the room like heavy smoke. A name connected to both him and Jake? He could barely breathe. What did this mean? Who was this twin? Hope flickered, then dimmed, swallowed by doubt. Jake's small voice trembled. What's happening? Who are you talking about? Richard turned toward Jake, searching for comfort in his young, innocent eyes. But fear crowded his chest as he realized it was not just Jake who needed answers. They both did. The judge cleared his throat, his expression grave. According to this message, Emily's twin has evidence that could change the course of this case. Gasps rippled through the room again. Richard felt the weight of every gaze, felt it like a physical tug. His foot shifted nervously, but he stood firm. Bring her in, a lawyer in the crowd suggested, hope threading through the chaos. But before anyone could act, the doors swung open again. A figure stepped in, wrapped in shadows, moving with purpose. The murmur died, like a flame snuffed out in the wind. It was her, Kara, Emily's long-lost twin. The resemblance was uncanny. Long, dark hair framed a face Richard knew too well. A face he thought he'd left behind in memory. Shock washed over him. Kara? He whispered, unable to comprehend. Her eyes flickered, finding Jake before settling onto Richard. I'm sorry it took so long, she said, voice thick with emotion. I had to hide, for his safety. What safety? Richard's mind raced, confusion clouding his thoughts. The courtroom breathed, every eye fixated on the connection, the revelation now before them. I have things to tell you all about Jake, she started, her voice breaking. There's more to this than you know, more than Emily ever revealed. Julio sneered. You expect us to believe you? What do you know about Jake? Richard felt a surge of protectiveness. This was not about Julio. It never had been. Kara, please, he said firmly, desperation creeping in. Why are you here now? What is the truth? Kara took a deep breath, stepping closer. Because I'm not just Emily's twin. I'm Jake's mother. A stunned silence fell. Richard felt his legs buckling. His heart raced in disbelief. No, this couldn't be real. Jake is my son, Kara continued, her voice steady despite the storm swirling around them. Emily took him to protect him from us, from the darkness in our family. The room erupted in chaos, voices clashing together, disbelief hanging there like a cloud. Richard's heart shattered, the pieces tumbling into an abyss. "Not your son?" Julio laughed, his derision a sharp knife. Jake's eyes darted between Richard and Kara, confusion painted on his delicate features. "Mommy?" he asked, his small voice barely a whisper, innocence wrapped in fear. Richard's world crumbled. Kara reached out toward Jake, but Richard stepped in, his heart heavy, heartbroken. Confusion turned to rage within him. "No, you can't just say that. You weren't there. You didn't know." "No, Richard, but it's time you knew. Time to understand why everything happened, why Emily made her choices." The truth cascaded like a waterfall, drowning every question Richard struggled to formulate. "Lies built a wall between us," Kara murmured, tears pooling in her eyes. "But I never stopped loving him, Richard. I never stopped wanting him." Jake stepped back, fear seeping into his tiny frame. "Mommy?" Richard felt torn, the boy's gaze piercing through him. There was so much more at stake now. Why had Emily hidden this? Why at such a cost? As the courtroom noise swirled, Richard felt his heart quickening, uncertainty clawing at him. Suddenly, a gasp echoed, drawing everyone's attention to the back of the room. A woman stood there, pale as a ghost, clutching a file. "I had something that will explain everything." Richard's breath caught. Could this day get any more twisted? What other secrets lay hidden? The storm of truth gathered, ready to break. And as everyone turned to face this new stranger, questions flooded Richard's thoughts like a torrent. What more did he not know? The woman at the back of the courtroom took a shaky step forward, clutching her file close to her chest. The atmosphere was electric, a charged current weaving through the crowd. Richard felt his breath stutter in his throat. Could it really be her? Kara stood there, frozen in a moment, caught between uncertainty and resolve, her presence like an apparition from the past. As if sensing the weight of the room, she straightened her back, determination flickering through her eyes. "I found evidence. I need you all to listen." The judge motioned for silence, his expression a mix of confusion and curiosity. "Proceed, Ms. Martinez." With trembling hands, she unfurled the file, papers spilling onto the floor. It felt like time slowed as Richard leaned closer. What could possibly change now? Kara breathed deeply. This is about Emily and Jake. It's about all of us." Her voice quivered, but carried an unnerving strength. "Emily and I weren't just twins. We were involved in things we couldn't escape. And Jake, he is at the center of a web we've spun around him." Richard's heart raced. Why did this feel like a warning? "What do you mean?" he pressed, barely containing the urgency in his voice. Kara plucked a photograph from the chaos of papers and held it up. "This is a picture of Emily, but it's not just her." For a moment, Richard squinted at the photo. In it, Emily stood smiling beside another woman, someone he didn't recognize but felt a strange familiarity with. "What is this?" His voice was thick, confusion spilling over. "That woman is Laura," Kara said, her breath hitching. "Emily's best friend. But there's more. They were involved in something much darker. Her voice cracked slightly, the weight of her words heavy. They were part of a secret organization, Richard. One that took kids and... Gasps rippled through the courtroom again. Disbelief twisting the faces around him. Richard felt his stomach drop. What did she mean, took kids? Kara's eyes were pleading, full of sorrow. Jake was meant to be their pawn, Richard. The truth is, he may not be safe with either of us. The world spun, reality fracturing like glass. Richard shook his head, trying to piece the fragments together. But he's my son! Is he? Julio interjected, a cruel smile teasing at the corners of his mouth. Can you be sure of that anymore? The tension in the room snapped, and Richard's fists clenched. You're all messing with his life. Kara pressed on, her voice rising above the chaos. I didn't come back to destroy lives. I came back to save him. I've been in hiding because they're looking for us. For Jake. They think he holds something valuable, a key to their horrible plans. Stop! Richard yelled, pain flooding his tone. What do you mean valuable? What does Jake have? But before a response could come, the courtroom door burst open, another figure slipping inside. A man with sharp features and a dark coat, eyes glinting like knives. I found you, he said, voice low, menacing. Kara, it's time. Kara recoiled, fear etched across her face. Richard's heart sank further. Who was this man? What was happening? Every eye turned toward him, confusion morphing into fear. Jake's small body trembled beside Richard, confusion clouding his innocent eyes. What's going on? The clock ticking filled the silence, each second stretching painfully. Richard wanted to shield Jake, to fight this storm of lies threatening to consume them. But the questions churned, growing louder in his mind. Why had Emily hidden this? What else was there? And as the man stepped closer, Richard's instincts screamed danger. What other truths awaited them? And just like that, hope flickered out, leaving only shadows behind. The courtroom seemed to close in around Richard, the air thick with tension and dread. The man with the dark coat moved closer to Kara, his predatory gaze locked onto her as if she were his prey. Richard's instincts screamed at him to protect Jake, to shield him from whatever darkness threatened to engulf them all. You're not safe here, Kara, the man said, his voice low, menacing. We need to leave, now. Kara's eyes widened, fear etched in every line of her face. No, you can't take me. I'm here for him. She pointed at Jake, desperation clinging to her words. Richard felt a surge of adrenaline. What do you want with my son? He shouted, stepping forward protectively, his heart racing. The man smirked, an unsettling grin that chilled Richard to the bone. He's not just your son. He's the key to everything. We've waited too long. It's time we reclaim what's ours. What are you talking about? Richard demanded, his voice shaking. What could he possibly have? But before the man could answer, the lights in the courtroom flickered. An eerie tension surged through the crowd, eyes darting toward the darkened corners of the room. And then, a loud crash echoed. The sound of shattering glass, pierced through the fear like a knife. Everyone turned, shock spreading like wildfire. A hooded figure burst in through the shattered window, clutching something tightly. The figure landed on the ground with a thud, rolling to a stop. Gasps filled the room. The figure pushed back the hood, revealing a woman, wild eyes. Face smeared with dirt. Breathless, Richard's heart dropped. "Get away from him," she screamed, her voice raw. "You can't take him!" "Who are you?" Richard's voice barely formed the words, confusion swirling with fear. The woman glanced wildly, searching for something. I'm his aunt." "What?" The word tumbled from Richard's lips, disbelief crashing over him. "Jake, come to me." The woman's eyes bore into Jake's, desperation coursing through her. Jake took a step back, confusion written all over his face. "Aunt?" His small voice trembled, uncertain. "Get back!" Richard shouted, stepping in front of Jake, his heart racing. "This is insane! What are you all hiding?" The man chuckled darkly, edging closer. "You really don't know, do you? They'll never let you take him. He's ours, Richard. The moment you accepted that bread from the street, he was marked." "What does that mean?" Richard felt his chest tighten. Everything he thought he knew shattered, splintering like the glass that surrounded them. Kara's eyes widened, fear mixing with realization. "What bread?" she whispered, panic rising. The room felt like it was spinning. Reality unraveling before Richard's very eyes. Suddenly, the man lunged forward, but Richard was faster, adrenaline pumping through him like fire. He pushed Jake behind him and shouted, "No!" In that exact moment, the woman lunged at the man, and chaos erupted. Richard's breath caught as he saw Jake's expression shift from confusion to utter terror. What's happening? Why is everyone fighting? The hooded woman wrestled with the man, and in the struggle, a knife glinted in the dim light before it slipped from the man's grasp. It clattered across the floor, echoing in the chaos. Time felt suspended as Richard's eyes locked onto the knife, its presence a stark reminder of the danger flooding their lives. But then, out of the corner of his eye, Richard noticed something lying among the scattered papers on the floor. A locked case, painted with strange symbols. Before he could think, he moved. His hand reached down, heart pounding, desperation fueling his actions. He picked it up and slammed it open. Inside, there were pictures, documents, and a small device buzzing softly. Richard gazed down, shock rooting him to the spot. "Richard," Kara called, panic splashing across her features. "What did you find?" The crowd hushed, all eyes on him. Every breath felt like a shared gasp. It can't be." Richard stumbled over his words, looking through the images. "They're not just secrets, they're identities." The room froze, tension palpable. In that moment, everything Richard had fought for, everything he thought he understood about Jake, Kara, and even Julio, hung by a thread. What had he stumbled upon? As shocks traveled through the room, Richard felt the ground shift beneath him once more. The truth was unraveling, and he was right in the center of it all. But would it save them? Or destroy everything? Richard felt the weight of the file in his hands, its contents swirling like a storm of confusion. The photos, the documents, they were fragments of a past he never fully understood. The eyes around him were wide, faces twisted in shock. But Richard was lost in a whirlwind of possibilities. What could this mean? Was Jake really part of something sinister? Something larger than himself? Just then, the hooded woman who had burst in began to panic, her breathing quickening. She took a step back, glancing anxiously at the man in the dark coat. "Stay away from him!" she shouted, her voice trembling but fierce. He smirked. "You think you can save him? You don't know what you're up against." Richard's heart pounded. This scene was spiraling out of control. Jake clutched his leg, wide-eyed, looking from one adult to the next, confusion morphing into fear. Kara's eyes darted back and forth. "No one is taking him from us," she yelled, her voice filled with an urgency Richard hadn't heard before. But before anyone could react, the man raised his hand and shouted, "Enough!" His voice rang out, authoritative and chilling. The courtroom fell silent, tension heavy in the air like a thick fog. He stepped forward, eyes locked onto Richard's as something deep and unsettling flickered behind them. "I know about your past, Richard, and I know the truth about Jake's origins, but you'll find that it runs deeper than you think." Richard's chest tightened. "What are you talking about?" The man smiled, but it was no warm gesture. "You can't protect him from the legacy he carries. The truth is, Jake isn't just important because of what Emily did. He's vital because of what you are." Gasps erupted around them. Richard stood frozen, confusion choking him. What did that mean? A legacy? He was about to demand clarity when the courtroom doors crashed open again. A deep voice resonated through the chaos. "That's right! He's not just his son. He's part of a bloodline that ties back to an ancient order." Richard squinted, trying to see through the swirling chaos. Another figure entered. An older man, long white hair flowing down his back, wearing black robes that danced around him like shadows. The air shifted, sharp and electric, as he stepped forward with an unsettling calmness. "Jake belongs to something far greater than any of us," the man said, voice rich and deep. "His destiny is not merely a choice. It's written in the very fabric of our history." "Stop! This is insane!" Richard shouted, feeling the walls close in. He wanted to dismiss it all, but a thread of dread wove through his thoughts. The old man's gaze bore into Richard with an intensity that made his breath hitch. "You must understand, Richard. Their life, Emily's life, this organization's intentions, it was all to protect him from you." Richard's heart sank as realization crashed down like a wave. "Protect him from me? Why? What am I?" The man smirked. A glint of knowledge sparkled in his eyes. "You're not just any man. You're a descendant of the Order itself. Your past and heritage grant him powers he does not yet understand." The room stood still, the weight of the revelation sinking like lead. Richard felt the world tilt. How could this be? What kind of secret had been woven into his life? Jake's eyes filled with tears, confusion rising like a tidal wave. "Daddy, what's going on?" Before Richard could respond, the dark-coated man lurched forward. He cannot inherit what he doesn't understand. He must be protected at all costs. "No!" Kara yelled, reaching out desperately. "You don't get to decide that." But the chaos erupted again. Voices clashing, accusations flying. Richard felt the room spin, the stakes rising higher with every utterance. As the old man continued, "You need to confront your past, Richard. The time for hiding is over." As that truth sank in, the courtroom trembled with uncertainty. Richard was a moving shadow, the weight of destiny binding him as tightly as fear gripped everyone around him. The storm was about to unleash, and Richard felt like he stood at the center of it all. Would he rise to meet it, or would it consume him and Jake whole? Richard felt like the room was closing in on him. The weight of the old man's words pressed against his chest, each syllable a reminder of truths he had never wanted to face. A bloodline? He barely whispered it, his mind racing to catch up with the madness unfolding around him. Jake clutched his leg tighter, eyes darting between Richard and the hooded woman who claimed to be his aunt. The older man scanned the room, seemingly unfazed by the chaos, remaining like an impenetrable F. Richard squinted, feeling a growing sense of unease as shadows danced ominously around the courtroom. The dark-coated man took a step back. "This ends now," his voice thundered, reverberating through the heavy air. Before Richard could react, the hooded woman lunged at him, grabbing the case from his hands. "No!" he shouted, panic flooding through him. But in her rush, she tripped, falling to the ground. The case burst open, papers fluttering like frightened birds across the courtroom floor. Everyone stopped, breath held, as a single photo slipped free, gliding toward Richard like a tear slipping from the eye. He bent down, picked it up. The moment he saw it, everything shifted. It was a picture of Emily, sure, but not just Emily. In her arms was a baby, strong resemblance, dark hair, piercing blue eyes. His chest tightened. "Jake!" he breathed, disbelief flooding his words. A murmur spread through the room like wildfire. "That can't be! What is it?" Kara's voice broke, her hands trembling. Richard's mind whirled. This is... it means... Every pulse in his body quickened. Could it be true? Was this why Emily had kept secrets? And then, the dark-coated man spoke, a sinister edge in his voice. "You can't hide your true self from him anymore, Richard. The truth knows no bounds." Chaos erupted again, a whirl of gasps and shouts. Richard could barely think, the world around him blurring. Hatred mingled with confusion, all eyes on him now, demanding answers he didn't have. Jake was shaking, looking lost and terrified. Suddenly, Kara's expression transformed. "No, this isn't right," she shouted. "He is not a part of this. You can't take him away." Richard's heart sank. Take him? Who's taking him? But before anyone could respond, another figure burst into the room. An officer, uniform crisp, body tense. He looked around, eyes locking onto Richard with urgency. "There you are! We've been looking for you!" Richard felt the world tilt again. "Looking for me? Why?" The officer rushed closer, face pale. "You need to come with us, now. It's about the case and Jake's safety." "My son is staying with me," Richard shouted, stepping protectively in front of Jake. But the officer shook his head, urgency lacing every word. "You don't understand. There are forces here that will do anything to get Jake. You need to leave now." Then, time fractured. The dark-coated man reached forward like a predator, eyes blazing with rage. "You don't think you can escape this, do you? You can't run from your past." In that moment, everything Richard believed shifted yet again. The man lunged toward Jake, but Richard reacted on instinct. He shoved Jake behind him, ready to defend. But then, in a sudden twist, the hooded woman threw herself at the dark-coated man, a desperate cry escaping her lips. "You don't know, do you? It's not just Jake. It's you!" What? The words hung heavily in the air, confusion spreading across Richard's face. "What do you mean?" he demanded, heart racing. But the hooded woman fell silent, locked in a fierce embrace with the man, eyes blazing with an ancient truth Richard couldn't comprehend. The world around them spun. Jake whimpered softly. Richard felt terror wash over him. What on earth was happening? Suddenly, the courtroom erupted into a frenzy. The officer tried to push through, shouting orders, but the chaos enveloped them like smoke. And as Richard turned toward Jake, the truth stabbed at him. A truth far more terrifying than he could ever have imagined. Jake, would they ever find safety? Or was every moment just the beginning of a larger nightmare? Richard felt like the very ground beneath him was crumbling. The chaos of the courtroom swirled as the dark-coated man lunged forward again, hatred boiling in his eyes. "You think you can save him? You've already failed." "No!" Richard shouted, pushing Jake behind him, anger pumping through his veins. But just as he was about to confront the man, the hooded woman trembled violently. "Stop!" she cried out, abruptly turning her gaze to Richard. "You don't understand. Jake is more than just a child caught in this." The tension snapped like a taut string, ready to break. Everyone froze, uncertainty crashing down. In that moment of silence, Jake tugged at Richard's shirt, looking up with wide, frightened eyes. "What does she mean, Daddy?" Richard's heart raced. Questions swirled. What could possibly be more? His father instincts kicked in, but all he felt was the overwhelming urge to protect. "Jake," he breathed, barely keeping his voice steady. "We're going to figure this out. Just stay close to me." Suddenly, there was a loud crash, a sound echoing through the courtroom that sent shivers down everyone's spine. The door burst open again, revealing a figure cloaked in shadows, bringing a rush of cold air. "Let him go!" the newcomer yelled, stepping into the light. Richard's heart sank. It was Laura, Emily's best friend. Her presence felt like a ghost had returned from the grave, and the room thickened with tension. "Laura?" Richard whispered, blood running cold. What was she doing here? What did this all connect to? "Jake is in danger. There's something you all need to know," Laura said breathlessly. She looked terrified, yet determined. "The truth can't stay buried. Not anymore." Richard demanded, his voice low and steady as he clenched his fists. He was ready to fight at this point. Fight for Jake, for Emily, for everything that felt shattered. Laura took a moment, her breath hitching. "Everything you think you know is a lie. He's part of our family, but not just as Emily's son." Richard narrowed his eyes, his mind racing. It felt like a heavy fog settled around them. "What are you saying?" She plunged forward with a hidden urgency. "He's the product of a union Emily intended to shield. A union meant to overturn everything you know. He's not just a boy. He's a beacon of power." The room erupted in chaos again. People gasped and murmured. Richard felt a rush of cold blood drain from his face. "Power?" he repeated, trying to process every word. Your family has been entwined with darkness for generations. Laura's voice trembled under the weight of her revelation. There's a reason they've been after him. Why you're all caught in this web. He holds the key, not just to Emily's past, but to an entire legacy. Backing away slightly, Richard felt Jake's small hand on his back. The boy's innocence was a stark contrast to the turmoil that threatened to consume them all. "Mommy," Jake whispered, tears falling down his small cheeks. In that moment, a scream tore through the courtroom. Loud, sharp. A flash darted, and suddenly the floor trembled. The lights flickered dangerously. Richard's heart pounded as the atmosphere shifted, becoming suffocating and electric. The dark-coated man lunged towards Laura, but before he could reach her, an unseen force erupted from Jake. A wave of energy blasted through the air, violently throwing everyone backward. Richard caught a glimpse of something powerful within Jake, something ancient. Then, silence fell. The once loud room was now eerily quiet. Richard blinked, trying to grasp what just happened, every eye wide in disbelief. Jake stood, trembling, a flicker of something supernatural ignited in his blue eyes. Fear and power twined together in an unholy bond. "Jake," Richard breathed, the weight of reality crashing down. What did that mean? What had just emerged? And with that, the gravity of their tangled secrets loomed larger than ever. In the wake of that shocking surge, Richard was left with the horrifying question: what lay ahead of them as a family entangled in such dark forces? And was Jake still the innocent child he thought he knew? As the dust settled from the chaotic surge of emotions and revelations, Richard stood frozen, feeling the weight of everything crash down on him. The courtroom felt surreal, like a twisted dream he couldn't wake up from. Jake looked up at him, wide-eyed, fear etching deeper lines across his small face. "Daddy?" Jake's voice trembled, almost breaking Richard's heart. The dark-coated man snarled, ready to pounce. But Richard felt something shift within him. The energy radiated from Jake, sparking confusion and a strange warmth. The room hummed with tension, but beneath it lay a river of hope. Maybe they could break free together. "Stay behind me," Richard shouted, instinctively pushing Jake further to the back. With a breath that felt like a jagged shard, Richard met the dark man's gaze. "You won't hurt him. Whatever game you think you're playing ends here." Laura stepped up beside him, her expression fierce. "He's stronger than you think. We're not going to let you take him." Kara glanced at Richard, her urgency palpable. "The truth has to come out. We can't let them control him anymore." The dark-coated man sneered. "You think you can hide him? The Order will always find him." Before Richard could reply, the courtroom doors burst open. Again, a group of law enforcement officers stormed in, followed by a tall woman with fierce eyes and urgent energy. "Get back!" she yelled, moving forward. "Who are you?" Richard asked, bewildered. "Your ally," she stated, pointing at Jake, whose eyes darted between his father and the newcomers. "We're here to protect him. He doesn't belong to them." She approached Jake, kneeling to his level. "Sweetheart, you have something very special inside of you. You need to trust us." Suddenly, a brilliant light emanated from Jake, illuminating the courtroom. A swirl of power danced around him, pushing the dark-coated man back with a force that made Richard's heart swell with pride and fear. Jake's face relaxed slightly, his fear beginning to melt as his eyes glowed with that mysterious energy. "Jake?" Richard breathed, awe wrapping around him. "That's it, Jake," Laura encouraged, emotion heavy in her voice. "You're not alone. You are part of something so much bigger." The dark-coated man growled in frustration, his power wavering as the light from Jake grew brighter, illuminating the room in warmth. "No, this is impossible!" With a final surge, Jake's light flared, casting aside the shadows of doubt. Everyone watched, breathless, as the dark man stumbled back, crashing into a wall, his expression shifting from anger to sheer panic. Captured in the moment, Richard grabbed Jake, holding him close. "We've got you, buddy. You're safe." Slowly, the chaos began to settle. The dark man, disarmed and defeated, slumped to the ground as the officers surrounded him, cuffs glinting in the light. In the aftermath, silence draped the room. Richard looked around at the faces of the people he'd fought beside. It was a mix of relief and disbelief. Kara stepped forward, tears shining like gemstones in her eyes. "You did it, Jake! You're free now!" As Jake melted into Richard's embrace, Richard felt the warmth of hope bloom. The past was a chaotic web, but for the first time, they were breaking free. The officer in charge approached with a serious expression. "We need to get you all to safety. There are still threats out there." "Then let's go," Richard replied, feeling a new confidence settling into his bones. He held Jake tighter, knowing they would face whatever came next together. As they left the courtroom, the sunlight spilled in, wrapping around them like a comforting blanket. It was a new beginning, a chance to reclaim what had been lost and build something fresh from the ashes of confusion. "Daddy," Jake said softly, looking up with starry eyes, "can we have ice cream?" Richard chuckled, pride swelling in his chest. "Absolutely, buddy. We'll have ice cream and whatever else your heart desires." The laughter broke through the tension like music, a promise of brighter days ahead. And as they walked out, hand in hand, Richard felt the weight lift, a fierce determination igniting within him. They were a family, bound not just by blood, but by the choices they would make together. But even as hope surged, a question lingered in the air. What else lay ahead for them in this chaotic world? Now, we want to hear from you. If you loved this journey, you must subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. This is the time to show your support.